Okay, chapter 1 in marketing analytics. This is a pretty brief chapter. There's no math in this chapter. This will be the only chapter, I believe, that has no math. So, just kind of a brief introduction of what we're talking about when we say marketing analytics, and that's pretty much it. So, I've got a couple slides. My slides have absolutely no fanfare. So, you should see blank white on your screen right now, and that's correct. That's what it should be. So I'm going to go through a bunch of things. Um, First of all, why marketing analytics? Why is this a thing? Okay. Um, if you've taken marketing principles from me, you've probably heard me talk about how important it is to evaluate things because it justifies what you're doing and ultimately it justifies your actual job. And so, beautifully now we have lots of analytical, statistical, math techniques, if you want to call them any of those things, to help us do just that. We put out an advertisement. How did we do? We send out coupons. How did we do? We've spent so much money trying to acquire new customers. How do we do? Historically it's been, well, let's just throw some money at this and some money at that. We don't really know if it's going to work or not, but you know what? It's a tax write-off from accounting standpoint. So luckily, we've gotten a lot more savvy than that. As you get out into your careers in marketing, you will run into lots of resistance from non-marketing people. If you work in a medium-sized or smaller organization, if you are able to communicate directly with the CEO, there's going to be some pushback on things you want to do. Yeah, maybe from finance people, accounting people. There are lots of people that are going to be naysayers and think that marketing is just smoke and mirrors and doesn't really do anything. Okay. Personally, I was in an organization that was like this. I was a marketing coordinator, I guess you'd call me, and my direct report was, or my direct boss was our VP of marketing, and we put together lots of programs, but we didn't have a marketing budget. Basically, we just had to, each time we wanted to do something, we had to write a proposal, go to the CEO, and get his approval. And sometimes he would be like, yeah, okay, whatever. And other times he'd be like, nope, that's no good, we're not doing that, without any real information as to is this really going to work or not. Okay, and so beautifully or thankfully we had already begun to do some kind of rudimentary analytics to help justify what we were doing, and things that he approved, by and large, for the most part, did really well. Okay, so let's just get into some of the concepts and things we're going to talk about as we go through the course, and we'll go from there. And anytime you have a question, write them down as you watch the videos, and then feel free to email me whenever. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the language here. So we say marketing analytics. The book is entitled Marketing Metrics. You might hear marketing data, marketing statistics, marketing analysis. It's all the same thing. Okay, so if you're a baseball fan, there's a lot of advanced statistical techniques that have come into prominence the last 10 years or so, and they refer to them as analytics, whereas older statistics were just called stats. I think it's a misnomer. I think all of these things are stats. All of these things are analytics. We just need to kind of get on the same page in what we say. Okay, so analytics are just kind of statistical techniques to analyze some sort of information. Okay, so some terms to talk about here. Metric, again, the book is called Marketing Metrics. A metric is just some sort of measuring system. We could call it a stat as well. So return on investment, that is a metric. It's a system for measuring profitability. Okay, why do we need metrics? Well, and also why do we need analytics? We've just talked about it. It helps you evaluate what you're doing, justify your projects, justify your existence, and even beyond that, it helps you refine what you're doing and hopefully do things better over time. Okay, you do a coupon campaign, you get an ROI of 7%. You're like, well, that's not so great. Let's do it again next year with some tweaks. And then you do that and you find out that you got a 12% or a 15% ROI. You've gone up. That's good. So without metrics, you wouldn't ever know that. Okay? So it's an extremely important skill everyone needs to know in marketing. Marketing is not just the old Mad Men, um, you know, vision of long ago where it's just a creative process and you put these ideas together and then you go out and you disseminate these ideas. That's still part of it for sure, but the statistical side of it has become huge. Okay, and not just in evaluating what you've done, but doing some things ahead of time to predict how will it do. So we could even talk about research here, focus groups, surveys, things like that, to get us information on the front end that we can then use to design something that will hopefully give us positive information on the back end. Okay. Important quote to remember is, if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So you do some sort of campaign, if you can't measure its results, then there's no way to improve upon it. There's no way to know if you did well on it. Okay, so that's the whole idea of marketing metrics and marketing analytics. Analytics is to be able to manage those things that you're doing. Okay, and I've mentioned this numerous times already. You absolutely must be able to quantify marketing actions. Okay, quantifying marketing actions helps you determine success, gives you ammunition to gather marketing funds for your next project or your current project. And it's a way to get on finance's good side. If you can report positive ROI, positive results on all of your projects, they like that and they'll be more willing to give you more money. Okay? And in fact, in the real world, the way companies work, if they have a marketing budget, so most firms, the marketing department gets a budget that for a year, and they get to spend that money however they see fit. And basically, when getting the marketing budget for the next year, generally the better you did in the previous year, the more money they're willing to give you in the next year. Okay, so success breeds success. So we quantify our marketing actions to show how well we're doing, and that should be able to justify a larger marketing budget for the next year. Okay. Know that there's no one best metric. There are a gazillion metrics and analytical techniques out there. You can Google, any sort of, combination of these terms, and you'll find so many things. But know there is no one best metric. If you run across someone or run across a website that says this is the absolute best marketing metric, they're full of it. Okay. It may work best in some instances, but not other instances. So beware of someone saying this is the only way you can evaluate this information, because that typically is not true. Generally, what we do to evaluate our marketing actions from an analytical standpoint is we do what we call a marketing dashboard or an analytical dashboard. So basically what this means is we'll just use a combination of metrics. Okay? So if we're trying to evaluate the effectiveness of a sales force, we may look at ROI. We may look at their close rate. We may look at their ability to retain customers. We also may look at the number of sales calls they made on average per week. Okay, and you can kind of take a combination of all of those to get a better view. We can call it a 360-degree view, if you want, of how well we're doing. So it's not just for personal selling. We can do it for advertising, coupons, digital campaigns, all kinds of things. Okay, so when we're trying to decide on which metrics to use, validity is a big issue. Okay, we want to make sure that we're measuring what we mean to measure. Okay, so a good example is if we go back to personal selling. Close rate. Close rate is just what percentage of sales calls resulted in some sort of conversion or some sort of sale. Okay? Does that give us a good view or good valid view of the profitability of that salesperson to the firm? And the answer is no. That's, close rate is not a valid metric for assessing salesperson profitability. Okay, because they may be closing at a higher rate than their coworkers, but they may be pushing lower margin products, or maybe their expense account is higher. So you could actually be losing money on the salesperson that has the best close rate. Okay, so with that information, you could say, well, this doesn't really measure what we want, so we should think about some other metrics here. Okay, so another example is we're interested in analyzing or calculating brand loyalty. Okay, so someone decided, well, okay, let's just kind of use repeat sales as a proxy for brand loyalty. Okay, so you go out and you see repeat sales of this. So okay, the people that come back and buy from us a second and third time, they're brand loyal, and that's great. Okay, but what's the problem with that? Where might there be some problems with validity? What if there are no other options? What if you are a monopoly, or you're in a geographical place where there are no other competitors? They buy your product because they have to, not that they really love your product. Okay, so you have to define loyalty in some way, and then go from there. Hopefully, just using repeat sales as a definition for brand loyalty. Brand loyalty is not something that you're going to do. Multiple metrics, the dashboard we talked about before, using a combination of metrics should help increase validity. Okay. Know that metrics are used to track concepts. Loyalty is a concept. Profitability is a concept. Brand awareness is a concept. We use metrics to evaluate all these. Okay. You need to, in the process of setting up metrics and setting up a dashboard, you need to start with the concept and then figure out how to measure it instead of the opposite. You don't start with a metric and say, okay, let's use this metric and now let's figure out what it does. Okay? Define the concept, make it known to the organization, and then choose the metric to evaluate that concept. Okay? Another issue that we can have is issues with reliability. Can we measure the metric or measure the concept the same way every single time? Okay? So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Okay? Example is a bathroom scale. If you weigh yourself, regularly, does it always reflect your actual weight? Or is there some error? Are there some problems that it doesn't necessarily do it accurately all the time? Okay? That's a good question. Okay? So validity versus reliability, we have to kind of think about these things as we're putting together our metrics. So when thinking about validity versus reliability, you can kind of represent it graphically. Okay? So you've got, basically, if you think about it, the closer the arrow is to the target, the more valid the metric is. Okay, so if we're measuring what we're supposed to be measuring, that's like hitting the bullseye. Okay, reliability has to do with how close together all your different shots against the target are. Okay, so this would be reliable but not valid. But if all the shots are closer together and close to the middle, then it's both reliable and valid. Okay, this is just a big mess, and this is just a big mess as well. Okay, so just know that graphically this is kind of how it is. So validity is how close you are to the bullseye, and reliability is how closely clustered all the different shots or measurements, if we want to take it back into the marketing analytics context. Okay. All right. So a couple more terms to kind of think about data. You probably hear this term a lot. Data is just raw numbers. It could be raw words, in text. Okay. From that, you go through the process of doing some sort of analytical technique. That data is converted into something useful, and that's what we call information. So data is just a bunch of numbers, a bunch of words. Information is using it to converting it into something meaningful, and then knowledge is storing that information. So once it's in your head, something that's established that you know works, then you've got what you call knowledge. Okay. When it comes to metrics, user friendliness is important. There's the old phrase, keep it simple, stupid. I think that applies, doubly in analytics. Again, you can get as complicated as you want, but in most organizations and most departments, that is highly unproductive. Okay, so just like designing computer software, you want to make it as user-friendly as possible. Okay, so metrics should help us evaluate our performance, but also improve decisions as well. Okay, so it's not just about, and I've already mentioned this, it's not just about seeing how we did, but also seeing how we can improve what we're doing. Okay, and that's the essence of marketing analytics, marketing metrics. So we'll be going through a bunch of different techniques week by week as we go through the course. So get ready. It's action-packed. It's very hands-on. If you're a math person, you're going to love it. If you're not a math person, it's going to be a fun challenge, I think. Okay, so course is not super difficult. There's a lot of repetition just to make sure you get the techniques down, and then when you get into job interviews and things, you can talk about how you took an analytics class and you're versed in analytical techniques across many different categories. Okay, all right, that's it. Thanks, guys. See you again for chapter 2.